When I visit an art museum, it is to recharge my own batteries, but I also get lots of great ideas for lessons that I can do with my students. And it's really not about copying stuff that I've seen at the museum, but it's really about looking at the artwork and what it sort of inspires, ideas. I really like working with ideas with my students, and then figuring out a way that they can attach that idea to themselves and then create a work of art. So a very common one is Kehinde Wiley's work, where he's taking poses from classical works of art and then reimagining them with contemporary figures, and then he does these patterns in the background that sometimes overlap the figure. I think they're a wonderful way to kind of connect with a contemporary artist, but then I can have my students, get out their phones. They can look up some famous images from the Rococo period or the Baroque period or Renaissance and recreate that pose and then put themselves into that image, maybe play around with pattern like Kehinde does, or reimagine it with their own, sort of spin. So I love that kind of idea, and that's sort of where I go with these things that I find at museums. So John Garrett is an artist, contemporary, and I saw his work in Charlotte, North Carolina. He does fibers and weaving and those kinds of things, and I would like to incorporate a little bit more fiber art into what I do with my students. And I saw this and I thought, sometimes we come across a glut of supplies that we have no idea what to do with, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of hand out those supplies to my students and talk about weaving and macrame and tying, and then they could each sort of take a piece, reimagine it, kind of put it into a format. I believe these were about 2 by 2 inches, and then they're attached to like a chicken wire frame, and this could make a nice mural that could be put into a building somewhere. So finding some kind of common supply or group of supplies that you have and letting students kind of explore, weave, tie, to create their individual pieces, and then we could put those together. I've certainly seen grids sort of done as murals within schools, and I thought that might be an interesting way to kind of explore it. Maja Godleska is another artist that does this piece called The Language. It's a highly textured painting that I saw in the museum. And to me, I'm not sure that this is what the artist did, but it is called The Language. And I kind of thought maybe that's A, B, C, D, E, like reimagining the alphabet into symbols. And I really love the textures that they put in there, these muted color palette. And I thought, what if students kind of reinterpret the alphabet into symbols and then created a composition that maybe was a poem, maybe a statement, maybe a diary entry, and then creating a larger work from that. So it would highly individualize the piece. I think it would be fun to kind of explore this as a painting or drawing kind of a project, and that artist is a great one to kind of look up and find more examples. Another artist I saw was Carlos Estevez, and he did this interesting piece that looked like mechanical marionettes. So this is kind of a close-up of one part of a very large painting. And I like this idea of marionettes. And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be interesting to have students sort of do a self-portrait showing marionette strings going to them, and then what is controlling them, and to have this kind of conversation about what sort of motivates them, what sort of gets them moving, what is it, your goals in life, and then maybe creating an artwork where we have the student as the marionette and what is controlling them kind of from above. It can be done symbolically, or maybe they're controlling something else. If they have a pet, maybe a marionette having a marionette. So I thought there's something there that I could use as an idea that I think would be really, kind of fun to explore. This one was by Lee Hall, a very simple, abstract work of art. And I really, just as I was looking at the piece, I thought, it kind of reminded me of an overview from Google Maps. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have students explore Google Earth, Google Maps, look at their own town, their own building, what's around, or maybe a place that they have vacationed. You know, maybe they could look up their culture, look at the capital city of that culture, and then perhaps project that image, kind of do the lines to kind of represent the map, and then play with the idea of colors representing emotional values, and then creating an abstract work of art based on something through geography. So I think it's interesting we could get cartography in there, making some kind of cross connections there. So I'm going to explore that a little bit more, but I like this idea of using Google Earth images or map images to create an abstract work of art so that it's, you know, the scaffolding is there, but then they could play with the color and texture to come up with some neat ideas. Vic Munoz is another artist that likes to reinterpret famous works of art. So here's the Birth of Venus, and it's done with junk. So there's all sorts of like metal pieces and shards and stuff that are in there to kind of recreate the image. I thought it'd be kind of interesting to reinterpret masterpieces with materials that are not sort of popular. You know, what would it look like to do Starry Night with Q-tips, you know, dipped in paint or something? So again, if you have a supply that you have plenty of, maybe students could reinterpret a masterwork in that supply, or students could bring in stuff and play with the idea of recycling. Malvina Hoffman did an interesting image called the Cambodian head. So we have this piece, and though it's a bronze, I like the idea of the crown, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have students explore their cultural backgrounds? Like, I'm Swedish and Irish, and maybe we could look up, you know, what maybe the crowns of, you know, heads of state from way back when, what that kind of looked like, and then redoing a portrait of myself with a Swedish crown or an Irish crown or something to kind of connect to heritage. So when we're trying to do cultural connections, I think that might be an interesting thing to sort of explore. It could be done three-dimensionally, could be done with clay, could be done as a drawing. I don't like to really pin down what media it is that I want to use. I'm just kind of generating some ideas here. Mervyn Jules is another artist that does some interesting contemporary work. And this one, very creepy, sort of looking this blood red sort of background, and we got a figure biting at his nails, and the shadow is kind of another figure there, kind of huddled over. And I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to have students explore the idea of themselves and then a shadow that's kind of showing off something that's going on in their psyche. So it could be them in contemporary dress, and then the shadow kind of showing what they want to be when they grow up. It could be a shadow of what kind of holds them back from their life goals. This could be them dressed up in, you know, whatever uniform or whatever for a career that they're hoping for, and then this shadow could be what holds them back from that, or what could hold them back from that. So I like this idea of exploring two parts of a personality through an artwork. So I think Mervyn's got something really kind of interesting there that we could explore. Elliott Dangerfield did an interesting painting that reminded me of Starry Night by doing a night image. And I thought it might be kind of fun to have students take an image of their home or their environment at night. And the colors will definitely be muted. You know, we want to be careful that we are able to capture enough detail that they could actually do a painting. But it might be interesting to do a night painting. I've never done that with my students, and I thought, that might be an interesting way to do it. Since you know, a lot of students have phones available, they could email an image to me, and then I can then print it out for my students so we could use that as a reference image. But doing a night painting and maybe exploring other night paintings that people have done. I know Edvard Munch has done one. Obviously, Van Gogh has done a few of them. We've got Elliott, and there are probably some other night images. So if we can get out like 4 or 5 examples and then have students explore, you know, a landscape at night, I think that might be kind of interesting. Lynn Drexler is another artist that does these abstract works. And to me, it sort of looks like an outdoor scene. I've got, you know, we got these greens and these blues up here. And to me, when I kind of squint and look at the image, I get the sense of kind of outdoors. Maybe these are rocks, maybe these are little plant reeds, maybe this is a stream going through, blue sky, maybe a tree. I like the idea of kind of simplifying an environment through brushstrokes. And you can see that these are rectangular brushstrokes that are kind of making up the scene, and it's kind of broken down into geometrics. So I think that might be a fun thing to kind of explore in kind of breaking down a subject into simple shapes. Now it could be dots, it could be squares like this one is, but there's something fun to kind of explore in this. So I'm going to probably do some examples on the side and see where I want to go with it. Do I want to do a portrait? But I think I like this idea of an outdoor scene. And I don't know that this is an outdoor scene. That's just kind of how I'm interpreting it. And then last in the museum, there was the Scholastic Art and Writing Awards show. And this was won by a student named Sarah Eckstrom, who did this wonderful image, kind of a silhouette of herself, and then we've got these birds kind of coming out here and the hands around a globe. And I like the idea of the bird silhouettes and then an image sort of emerging here. And I thought it might be interesting to have students explore a symbol for themselves and then repeat that symbol in the background and let the images sort of coalesce into a dark background. So we have the bird getting, big up here, overlapping to make a black area, and then getting smaller so we can see that they're actually birds. And then in here having some sort of an image, here a portrait, sort of where you're emerging from. So you could have sort of an interpretation of where it is you're going, your thoughts sort of taking flight. It doesn't have to be birds, but I think if a student did turtles, it might be interesting to see, the edge of a turtle and then other turtles kind of going off, or, a snail, or it could be a dinosaur. But I like this idea of overlapping silhouettes and then creating a large area of black that we can then play with another image. So I'm not sure, again, where I'm going with this, but that's how I use my museum visits to generate ideas. Some of these are just, sort of thoughts that I need to play with, but later on, I know that definitely a few of these are going to make it into my lesson plans and have my students kind of explore them. And that's what I do. So I would encourage you, as you visit a museum, to think of these as kind of broad ideas, problems that students can solve with materials and hopefully make some personal connections, as opposed to, hey, let's all copy American Gothic and then, just put two people there. Let's, use the ideas to just kind of be the seeds that then can grow into something that shows off our individuality. If you found this to be helpful, please subscribe to my videos and check out many others that I have up here for art educators all over the world. Thank you.